Daily podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin. I'll be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. Guys, follow me on Twitter at @MAdamMartin. This podcast is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com. Go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, like, share, tell your friends about it, guys. I'd appreciate that. Also, check me out at bjpenn.com and MMARings.net. So, a pretty good show today. I'm going to talk about the Contender series that took place last night, as well as a couple of fight announcements. Some really good fights that were just announced last night. So let's get right into it. Start with the Contender series. Definitely a good card. Another card where a couple of guys were signed to the UFC. So definitely, it's been a successful summer, I think, for the Contender series for Dana White and the matchmakers. They've signed some really good fighters here. So let's just start with the top and work our way down. Once again, a bunch of underdogs won. Main event of the evening, Omar Morales pulls off a second-round knockout over Harvey Park. Just really took it to Park with these low kicks that hurt Park badly, and then knocked him out with a punch. So great performance by Morales. He's 8-0 now. This guy is just a really good striker, man, and really aggressive. I enjoy watching this guy fight. Of course, he gets a contract by Dana White. I'm looking forward to seeing him fight. Hopefully, if someone drops out due to an injury, they can get him back in soon because he took no damage in this fight. He looks good to go. So the lightweight division's on notice, man. This guy is, I think, a problem. It's going to be a big problem for a lot of guys at 155. Next up, we had Lucia Reza defeat Marilia Santos via split decision. Very close fight, controversial. Dana White did not agree with the decision. I think a lot of people didn't. It was a close fight, I think. Could have gone either way, but I did think Santos probably edged it out. Either way, Rhea gets the win, but she did not get a contract. Dana White was not impressed with her performance, and she didn't win on his scorecards. And I think that's the most important thing here. Like, there's been a couple times this year where the fighter Dana White thought won, lost, and both of them didn't get signed. So I'd like to see Dana change that. If he's impressed by a fighter, even if they lose a close split decision or something, like, why not sign them? You know, it's his choice, it's his show, it's his promotion, right? So in this case, I don't think either of these fighters is ready for the UFC, so it's not a big deal. But how about a couple weeks ago with that Jordan Williams guy? Like, he should have probably been signed, even though he lost the fight. So I'd like to see Dana White maybe change his mood about that in the future. Next up, I think everyone saw this coming. Herbert Burns picked up a huge submission win in the first round over Derek Minner. But again, no one was surprised by this one. Derek Minner's been submitted so many times in his career. Herbert Burns is a submission specialist. There's a reason he was a huge underdog. He was minus 670. And I should mention, Morales was plus 275 at close, and Rhea was plus 190. So those two underdogs won. Burns was a favorite that won. Another underdog won. Andre Muniz picks up a first-round submission win over Taylor Johnson. I actually did pick Muniz on the podcast yesterday, so I thought there was some good value here just based on the experience. Again, he's got 22 fights now. Johnson's got 6. That was a big difference in experience. He gets the first-round submission via rear naked choke. Cashes a plus 248 dog at close, and he gets a UFC contract as well. So Morales, Burns, and Muniz get the contracts. And in the first fight of the night, Dwight Joseph picks up close unanimous decision win over Jay Perrin. Dana White didn't agree with this one as well. I thought Perrin won, but again, it was a close. Can't really argue the decision too much. It was just kind of a close fight, and neither guy got signed to the UFC. So that's unfortunate, but you know what? You got to finish fights on the show. I think we've seen time and time again, you get a stoppage win, you're most likely going to get a contract. So the guys that won decisions, or I should say in this case a girl and a guy, they didn't get their deals with the UFC. So welcome to the UFC, Omar Morales, Herbert Burns, and Andre Muniz. I'm looking forward to seeing all these guys fight. Morales at lightweight, Burns at featherweight, and Muniz in the middleweight division, which I think really could use some new blood. So that's a really good sign, I think, by the UFC. Overall, another good show, and there's just, I think, 2 or 3 episodes left, so I'm looking forward to the last couple episodes of the season, but so far, so good. All right, next up, we have a couple pieces of news here. Dana White was back doing a post-fight scrum here, and he talked about Colby Covington. He did confirm that Colby Covington is next in line for Kamaru Usman. So we all thought that was going to come, and now it's official according to Dana White. There's no fight announcement yet. Obviously, Colby has that cut. He's got to get taken care of, and Kamaru Usman is also healing up from his injuries. So I expect to see an announcement within the next month or so. It'll either take place at UFC 244 in November at MSG or at UFC 245 in Vegas in December. We'll see what happens there. Dana White also talked a little bit more about Cyborg. He very animated. You can go watch the scrum if you want. He's not happy with Cyborg. Just basically trashed her again, talked about her steroid pass and stuff. But again, my thing is, if you knew she was on steroids, you didn't like that, why did you sign her in the first place, right? It's kind of strange in my opinion. So Dana White, he can be very, I don't know what the word is, stubborn and just hypocritical at times. So that's one thing about Dana. Like, he changes his mind so often. But again, he's the man. He's the guy who owns the UFC. So good for Dana White if that's the way he feels about things. But I think for a lot of fans, they wanted to see Cyborg resign. To her part, she actually made a post yesterday saying that the UFC is going to be talking to her today. I don't know if that's true. Dana White sounded like he's really upset with her, but at the same time, he did say that if they can make the Nunez rematch, it's still something they want to do. But he, again, was adamant that Cyborg does not want this rematch. He didn't want to sign the contract. I'm not 100% sure what's going on there, but it definitely seems like the door's slightly open, more so than it was before. But I still think she goes to Bellator. So we'll see what happens there. And also, Kayla Harrison is calling her out as well to fight in PFL. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I think it's either Bellator or very, very slight chance that she could somehow return to the UFC. But I think Bellator is still the most likely place she goes to. A couple fight announcements here. Really good fight announcements, actually. First up, a rematch between Holly Holm and Raquel Pennington. That will take place at UFC 243. I was a little surprised by this matchup. These two actually have fought before back at UFC 184. It was a really close fight. Holm won via split decision. That was back in 2015. So 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago now, actually, February 2015. Holm wins a split decision there. And since then, obviously, Holm struggled a bit. Pennington's also struggled a bit. They're both, Holm's coming off the TKO loss to Manny Nunez, but she's still one of the top-ranked fighters. So is Pennington. She's coming off a split decision win over Irene Aldana, but before that had lost a couple of fights, including a knockout loss to Manny Nunez. So the winner of this fight is going to remain a contender in this division that's kind of weak right now. But at the same time, they both already lost in Manny Nunez. So it's hard to say they're legitimate title contenders at this point. I think if Holly Holm loses this fight, that'll probably be it for her career. And for Pennington, it's possible the same thing. I mean, I doubt it, but she's taken quite a bit of damage in her career. So depending on how this fight goes, we'll see what happens for both fighters. Pennington's pretty young, still at 30, so she probably still has some time left. But Holm is 37 now. So I do think this could be the last fight of her career. We'll see what happens. But this is, of note, the place where she knocked out Ronda Rousey at in Melbourne, so Marvel Arena. So that's a good place for her to fight. Obviously, she had that crazy knockout win, but we'll see what happens in this fight. Honestly, even though Holm did win the first fight, I'm kind of leaning towards Pennington a little bit. I just think Holm at this point, you have to kind of fade her. She just doesn't seem like she's the fighter she once was. Next up, UFC Boston gets a couple fights. These are some really good fights. Zabit Magomedsharipov takes on Calvin Kattar. A little surprised by this matchup. We kept hearing rumors that Zabit was going to fight someone like Yair or Kriya Zalmi or Brian Ortega, but he's going to be fighting Calvin Kattar instead. Calvin Kattar obviously is a Boston native, so this should be a good fight. Kattar's 4-1 in the UFC, coming off back-to-back knockout wins over Chris Fishgold and Ricardo Lamas. And the Lamas fight especially was just a devastating KO and showed just how good this guy can really be when he's at his best. So I think Calvin Kattar is a fantastic fighter. He's 31 years old. He's in his prime of his career right now. He's great, man. No doubt about it. A lot of experience, 20-3 record. He's been around since 2007. He's fought everywhere, and he's beaten a lot of really good fighters. So I think Calvin Kattar is great, but at the same time, man, this is a tough matchup. Zabit Magomedsharipov, 28 years old, 17-1 record, and he's 5-0 in the UFC, coming off a decision win over Jeremy Stevens. Wasn't his best performance, but still got the job done. I still think the fight with Brandon Davis was probably his best performance last year, where he got the Sulev stretch submission. But the guy's just fantastic. I mean, he finishes fights. He's huge for this division. I think Zabit wins this fight. I like Calvin Kattar a lot. He definitely is going to make this an interesting fight with that KO power he's got in his hands, but Zabit's so good everywhere. And Calvin Kattar, he has shown some holes in his game, especially in that fight with Renato Moicano. So I think Zabit will take a look at that fight, see what Kattar did wrong there, and take advantage of it. I like Zabit in this fight. I'm curious to see what the odds are when they come out. Also at UFC Boston, Eric Spicely is taking on Brendan Allen. This should be a pretty good fight as well. Eric Spicely is kind of a gatekeeper at this point, coming off a great fight with their Ron win. Lost the unanimous decision, but it was an amazing fight. One of the best fights of the year, just a slugfest. Overall, though, he's 2-5 in the UFC, so he's really struggled at the highest level of the sport. He does have a submission win over Thiago Santos, though, so at his best, he can definitely finish guys. This is a tough matchup, though, for sure. Brendan Allen, top prospect here coming in off the Contender series. He is 12-3 in his career. I mean, the guy's good, man. He looked amazing on the Contender series. That win over Aaron Jeffrey. He's on a 4-fight win streak, 3 of the wins by stoppage. He's a really good fighter. His only 2 losses in his career are to Eric Anders and Anthony Hernandez. Excuse me, actually 3 losses. Trevin Giles as well. So 3 guys that are in the UFC right now. Those are not bad losses. Eric Spicely's great. He can submit anyone. But Brendan Allen, 23 years old, a lot of experience. I think the UFC likes this guy. They're giving him a fight against the guy who loses a lot in the UFC. So Brendan Allen's definitely going to be the favorite in this fight, and it just depends how big of a favorite he's going to be. Finally, the last fight announcement I have to talk about here. It's another good fight at this UFC San Francisco in October. Ryan Spann against Devin Clark. I like this fight a lot. Ryan Spann coming off a fantastic knockout win over Little Nog in Brazil. I was there for that fight. Just a crazy knockout. He's 2-0 in the UFC. He's on a 6-fight win streak. He's a former Contender Series guy as well. 16-5 record, 27 years old. The guy's 6'5" for that division. So he's a massive light heavyweight. Definitely a good fighter. Taking on Devin Clark here, who's surprised me at times in the UFC. He's coming off a win over Darkman Stosage, a decision win. Overall, he's just 4-3 in the UFC, so he's struggled a little bit at times. He's been knocked out a couple of times, which scares me. Clark can definitely win decisions. He's got good wrestling. He can grind the fights out, but I definitely favor Ryan Spann in this fight. The guy's just a big guy, a lot of knockout power, and I think he probably just get the KO in this fight. If he doesn't, though, it could be an interesting if the fight goes late. So we'll see what happens, but definitely some good fight announcements here from the UFC. So they continue to put together great fights. Sean Shelby, Mick Maynard, these guys are two fantastic matchmakers. They're putting great fights on for the fans on Contender Series and in the actual octagon. So great fights coming up, guys. I'm looking forward to all these bouts coming up in the next couple months. It seems like the rest of 2019 is really filling up now. So I think we'll start to see some of these fight cards in like October and even November start to really get full up. And that's a good thing for sure. So we'll start to know what fights are happening. All right, so I think that's it as far as news and stuff goes. I want to mention that myself and Cole Shelton did a podcast yesterday breaking down this weekend's UFC Uruguay card. It's going to be a really good card, I think. Definitely some good fights on the main card, especially the prelims. There are some unknown guys for sure, so they could potentially be good fights. Who knows? They're lottery ticket, really, a lot of those fights. So we'll see. But the main card's got some really good fights, like Mike Perry versus Vicente Luque and Latifi Uzdemir, and of course, Carmouche versus Shevchenko, the rematch. So check out our podcast yesterday. It's available at MMAOddsbreaker.com as well, breaking down all the fights and giving our picks on them. So check that out. Guys, once again, thanks for tuning in today to the podcast. Follow me on Twitter at MMAdammartin. This podcast is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com and on channel. Please like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends about it. Also check me out at bjpenn.com and MMArings.net, guys. So appreciate you guys tuning in today. Have a great day, and I'll be back tomorrow breaking down whatever happens tonight in the world of MMA. So have a good one, guys.